faintly.
Death Stranding is indeed a very mysterious title. Ever since the game's reveal at E3 2016, discussions have been going on and on about the nature of this game, like a fire that no one can put out, fueled by Kojima's own statements about the game. With each statement he makes somehow revealing more information about the game, while at the same time asking far more questions than it manages to answer, which I believe is very much intentional. It's no secret that Hideo Kojima loves messing with his fans, and we as fans love to contribute in his games, and as he messes with us, we mess back with speculations and interpretations for the puzzles he presents. For clarification, this is a theory, don't take any bits of it as facts, no matter how rational they might seem to be. This theory is closer to a rational scientific explanation to what we saw from the trailers and other things. All the talking points are supported by more than one fact. Many things in the trailers are just up for speculations and cannot be analyzed, due to the insufficiency of details around them, and I might share them in another video with their most appealing speculations. The world of Death Stranding is one of the strangest worlds one can see. Too quiet to be post-apocalyptic, too weird to have life in. In order to start analyzing this world, we first must list its differences from our world, explain its terrain and abnormalities. The game takes place in America, now known as the United States of America, or the UCA. With cables hanging from the sky and craters lying around, and life hardly found, a catastrophe named Death Stranding changed the shape of the world 10 years ago.
And then came the next explosion. An explosion that will be our last.
Not a lot mentioned about how it was formed, but we got clues about how and when it happened, and with a little bit of speculation, we can drive some main lines that guide us to understand the world. The UCA cities have a different naming system. Washington DC, for example, is now called Capital Knot City.
Located in the capital Knot City ICU.
And all the way into the Pacific at the coast of California, you have Edge Knot City.
It's all to safeguard the continued independence of Edge Knot City,
with each having the word knot in it, further implying the rope connection Kojima stressed around. The world seems to be controlled by the company called Bridges. This is backed up by the oval office scenes shown in the trailers. Although, despite what looked like a political stability, the weather wasn't as stable. With the occurrence of the timefall and the flipped up rainbow, or water leaking from the ground bringing this to sea animals, the world was really bizarre. With the world and its bizarre settings laid out, it's time to dive into specifics. To start analyzing what brought the world in its doom, we have to figure out who is the man behind this doom in the first place, or on a larger scale, the organization and concept of belief that did it. The first trailer introduced us to our protagonist, Sam Porter Bridges, while the second one introduced someone who's far more evil, with a creepy aura floating around him. He was Mads Mikkelsen, who we didn't see much of him until the release date trailer back in May, which got me thinking about him even more. The character named Cliff isn't actually a villain, but rather an antagonist. He has his own goals to pursue, but his methods are a little bit shady. The release date trailer introduced us to a wide variety of looks for Cliff. The strangest of them are the one where he interacts with BB. Cliff was seen in a smart look, wearing a black suit and sitting in what looks like a laboratory. suggesting that he is a scientist of some sorts. Cliff was seen in two forms. One of them is very peaceful and kind, while the other one is terrifying, blood covering his face and him singing a lullaby in an ominous, evil voice.
See the sunset, the day is ending.
Like if he has just killed someone out of necessity, like if he was trying to secure something close to him and push away something dangerous. Cliff was involved in some sort of project with a company, presumably bridges. They had different interests and parted ways in an unpleasant way. What was the project, you ask? Of course, it involves PB, or as we know him, Bridge Baby. He is seen in all of Cliff's ventures. The second trailer, where he was searching for him, or the release date trailer, where he was speaking directly to him. In Cliff's encounters with BB, he was talking with intimacy, as if he was his father.
BB, don't worry. It's okay. I'll always be with you.
But what are the babies anyway? The babies are born to brain-dead mothers, put in incubators because they have a connection to the other side.
Mother?
Located in the capital Knot City ICU. Brain dead, of course.
You mean still mother?
Correct. A steel mother's womb facilitates a connection between the world of the dead and the BB. And you, in turn, connect yourself to a BB, granting you the ability to sense BTs.
Rings a bell to babies who have a connection to the other side? In Mama's spotlight, you see her with a BT baby, mentioning that it's her daughter and she is born on the other side, and that she only connects to her mama.
What is she?
She's my daughter. And I'm her mama. It's okay. She's only connected to me. It's not like the other BTs.
Of course, we have seen Mama previously dying under a rubble of cement and her daughters floating away. So what if the BBs are actually BTs, put in these incubators, so they are able to have a human connection and be physically interactive? I'll dive into the specifics of BTs later, but that assumption needed to be explained. Back to the fatherly act of Cliff. What if the BB he was interacting with is his child, and in fact, his project was like a form of resurrection trial to his child? In 2012, Kojima said that he got ideas from the Higgs field discovery, and if you don't know about the Higgs field discovery, I'll try to explain it simply in the following passage. The Higgs boson, or the God particle, is a particle that gives objects mass. The Higgs mechanism is the thing that's responsible to give objects mass. If we could theoretically isolate an object from the Higgs field around it, it would become massless. Put that in mind, that we do have an object that's massless. Einstein's theory of relativity states generally that if an object was theoretically able to surpass the speed of light, it would break free from the space-time fabric, allowing it to be existent anywhere, anytime, even travel back in time or jump to the future. But what stops anything from achieving such speed? Well, there is a lot of reasons for that. According to the Newton's law, every object exerts a force while moving, let's say a momentum, a kinetic energy, and at the same time, Newton's third law states for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So, if there are forces exerted by an object, the resistance of this object is equal to these forces, which dampens the speed of that object. So, if the forces exerted by the object are dependent on mass, and we got rid of that mass, where does that leave us? It leaves us to a submission of resistant forces equal to zero, an object not bounded by any kind of weight or resistance, not even air drag, allowing it to exceed any possible speed. Back to Einstein's theory of relativity. We now have an object that's already past the speed of light. hence free of the space-time fabric restrictions. An object that can travel anywhere, even to the realm of the dead. That's thankfully achieved by the Higgs mechanism. So back to Cliff. What if we assumed that he tried that on himself? With the help of some equations, he was able to retrieve his son, but then he was faced with another problem. He wasn't able to make him take a physical form without something from the other world. So, what was the project that Bridges did take advantage of? Remember when Sam said,
Covering the world in cable didn't bring an end to Warren's suffering. Don't act surprised when it all comes apart if you try to do it again.
do what again? Covering the world in cable? Does that ring a bell? While explaining the world of the game, we said that there are cables hanging from the sky. That takes us to the project Bridges made. The logo of Bridges' UCA branch resembles a map of America, but with a spider web spread across it. With Washington DC being the center, it's like connecting the states to become closer. They made it to the extent that these states are now called cities, but how can they approach that? If you check the routes of your home internet connection, you will find that it does enable a high quality connection due to a technology called optic fiber wires. These wires transmit information as light particles, at a light speed transmission to be exact. That brings us to Cliff's project, where he was able to allow bigger items to exceed the speed of light using the Higgs mechanism. But humans, or larger objects, are in data. It's not as simple as just gaining the speed. Assuming that these black cables transport whatever gets in them with a very high velocity comparable to the speed of light, and learning about a small phenomenon known as quantum tunneling, which allows a subatomic particle to break the potential barrier. Too much physics, huh? Yeah, me too. So let's just say it can make a particle travel from one point to another point with no restrictions. So Bridges actually made fast traveling portals by turning objects into particles and then transferring them via cables to the preferred location. So let's say if you want to go all the way from New York to Ohio, you would just enter a checkpoint, get rid of your Higgs field and mass of course, turn into particles and travel through these cables to appear in another checkpoint at Ohio. If you think this is far-fetched, you won't, until you realize that you saw it happen once. In the Ludian's fan character Spotlight, we saw Sam plug his necklace, known as Cupid, into the terminal at the checkpoint, where he delivers to JF. 1 second everything's steady, and the other, Sam is floating and light particles around him.
Alright? Join the UCA and all that? You can help me do that, yeah?
To add a little bit of confirmation to the theory, in 2017, Low Roar released a music video for one of their songs that's called Give Me an Answer. The director stated that he wanted to give the players the feeling of being in the world of Death Stranding. As shown in the video, the people hold some kind of piece and enter a room with black strands. An electromagnetic disturbance occurs. Then they disappear, probably similar when Sam used his Cupid, or when Mama's daughter disappeared, or when Cliff's compass went haywire.
Make this okay, it's foggy, but what do you want? I keep running to faces and places, remind me of who you are. You give me an answer. You give me an answer. Give me an answer. Give me an answer.
Until here, there is nothing with this project. It would actually bring an end to many global problems, as Bridges thought. As seen in the briefing trailer, Sam treated Bridges as if they were a bad company. Despite him holding respect for Bridges, Kojima has been known to criticize and mock America's policies. Most of Japanese developers do so. Resident Evil 2 Remake mocked them earlier this year in a scene too. Experiments like this are bound to fail at any time, and must be observed with extreme caution. Allowing objects to break the space-time barrier can be risky. Sam mentioned the fourth explosion that will be our last. What if a lab or a checkpoint just collapsed? It might create a portal or a wormhole that allows otherworldly creatures to come to our world as we go to theirs. We have seen the tanks and skeletal soldiers accompanied by Cliff in the release date trailer come as particles and just disappear in the air, as if they went into some kind of portal. Only this time, the location and destination aren't controlled, and that is what might be the Death Stranding of this world. It's different than the original Mass Stranding that targets the sea creatures. This one targets everything, even death itself is bound to be stranded. Kojima explained that there is no death mechanic in Death Stranding. When you die, you enter a temporary world, where you wander for a while and collect your belongings, then return to the world of the living. And then there is the world of the dead, which we encounter strange creatures from. So basically Kojima himself mentioned the existence of three separate worlds: the living, the purgatory, and the dead. For almost a year, everybody thought that the beach was the purgatory. While this being to an extent right, there is something missing. When we saw the TGA 2017 trailer, we saw Sam fall into purgatory, and then rises again to the world of the living. But how are these worlds aligned? Imagine a cheese sandwich. Top loaf having its bottom in contact with cheese, bottom loaf having its top in contact with cheese, and in the middle, cheese of course. With the top loaf being the living world, and the bottom one being for the dead. The middle is the purgatory, and the cheese is water. For easier explanation, we are going to call them the real world, Chiral world, and purgatory. When we saw the void out happen, everything looked like it was floating, but I saw Sam sinking, or him with the ground at least. The beast emerged from the ground up in a kind of a relative motion. If you are going past a stationary car, it would seem as if it's moving backwards. The verdict is, the Chiral world is inversed. Its water is in the sky, and while ours is transparent, theirs is dense and black. When they invade our world, they leave handprints rather than footprints. When we invade theirs, we do the same, although some of the characters are able to take physical form on both sides, not only their main side. When Kojima first introduced Death Stranding, some things particularly stood out, mainly the black handprints, the baby, and the beach. As the trailers progressed, we got to learn more and more about them. The handprints are left by creatures known as BTs, which is short for beach things, and the babies are later used to sense these BTs, but under the name of BBs or bridge babies. And the beach is kind of an area that holds lost souls that don't age. But let's talk more about the BBs and BTs. First, The BTs, or beach things, are otherworldly creatures. They come from the Chiral world, presumably they leave handprints filled with that black liquid. They have a lot of strands coming out of them, as if it is their connection to other people, or basically, the ones they are connected to. They are only able to take physical form when touched by a liquid like the rain or the black otherworldly water. But how do these BTs come to existence? For the one BT we are sure of its origin, it's Mama's daughter. She said that she is born on the other side, in her spotlight. So it's safe to assume that BTs are the inhabitants of the Chiral world, or the world of the dead. He who inhabits the world of the dead is a dead person. So basically, beach things are dead people, since especially the word beach things is often used with dead sea creatures on the beaches. But where do BBs come in? Where do they fit? According to Deadman, they are babies surgically removed from their still mother's womb. So if we have a brain dead person who is giving birth, where would his child be brought to life? In the release date trailer, we see Mama in pain under a rubble of crash, stretching her hands for her BT daughter, a one that's only connected to her, like the BBs who are only connected to their still mothers. Basically, what I am saying is, the BBs are BTs who are taken from their dead mothers when they were born, but in these incubators, which include some kind of fluid that renders them to feel like they are in their mother's womb, and replacing their only connection with the wielder of the incubator. That brings us to Cliff's motives. He somehow was able to discover that he might have sensed the kid in the place where his mother died and went on trials until he brought him back. He was able to give him life inside an artificial womb, but he continued to try and free him. What is life without being able to make contact with your own child? He said,
I'll show you the real thing soon. I promise.
But sadly, he was unable to do so. The World of Death Stranding's weirdness isn't limited to only its invaders and inhabitants. Even the world's atmosphere itself is strange. But one thing that stood out to me in particular is how often gold appears and how important and powerful it seems to be. Gold was always the most exquisite piece of jewelry a person can show off with. Ancient Egyptians especially admired it, and they even buried some of it with them. But why gold? We have been seeing gold appear in the game ever since the very first trailer. You can find pieces of it in the sand in the E3 2016 reveal trailer, or in Higgs's mask in multiple trailers, or Leia Seydoux' armband in the latest one, or in the faces of the BTs and huge creatures that Higgs can summon, and it appeared so much to the extent that it grew out of the soil like flowers in the latest Japanese trailer. But again, why gold? Gold is pure and precious metal. It's unique element of the periodic table that's known to be highly non-reactive. It's also known to be extremely conductive, unlike what some people might assume. Gold falls in the second place after platinum in conductivity. In making sensitive electronic parts like processors, the contacts are usually made of gold or platinum, since they offer the highest conductivity and most stable performance a metal can. Back to Higgs's golden mask, we see him use it to summon a time fall. Then he was able to shift his position in the time fall as if he could travel at the speed of light, almost as if he freed himself from interacting with the Higgs field.
Not even engineering void outs. There are extremists like the demons everywhere.
The time fall fast forwards whatever it touches.
These words were uttered by Leia Seydoux' character Fragile in her E3 2018 trailer. What if the time fall is basically a something that can free bodies or particles it comes in contact with from the Higgs field? Maybe the droplets from the timefall free whatever they come into contact with from the Higgs field, allowing it for a brief moment to travel to the future at the speed of light, or maybe even surpass it, which makes said body to age rapidly. I believe this is what Higgs does. He is somehow able to summon the timefall and use it to his advantage. He somehow learns that the timefall can break bodies free from the Higgs field, and he uses that to travel faster than light, or summon things from the other world. I also believe that this has to do with his use of gold and its unique properties. Maybe gold, being as conductive as it is, can allow for this transmission of the timefall from the other world faster, or send some kind of signal. Further proof that the timefall is connected to the otherworldly water. We are going to talk about the chiral allergy and the handprints. The first thing Kojima showed to us at the very beginning was a handprint left by a BT. Whenever a BT takes a step, he leaves a handprint in the soil, which fills in with some vicious black liquid as first seen in the E3 2016 trailer. It wasn't until E3 2018 trailer when Kojima alluded to the full potential and significance of these steps. They primarily cause two noticeable things, one of which is that they cause grass to rapidly age, decay, and grow once again around that step and the black liquid. The other thing was the floating of the water drops around that step. But before I continue explaining this, I'm going to ask you, how much time can you keep your eyes open for? Keep your eyes open for this one, eh? Since the whole Death Stranding theory is based on both worlds colliding due to some space distortion, and heavily on the Higgs field theory, my take is, if an otherworldly creature, a BT, was standing in a cubic meter in our world, not only that meter would be affected by its presence, but rather a small space around it, kind of like an aura. To simplify things, imagine that a BT is like a magnet, and the air around it is affected by its magnetic field. Back to the scene where the BTs take steps. We see the effects of what Fragile calls a chiral allergy.
Tears. A chiral allergy.
We see that as the BT gets closer to Sam, his skin turns red, but if we look closer and slow that scene, we notice that it ages as his arm hair grows old and falls. Also, a little piece of his head hair later ages, as if these parts experience something close to the peculiar effects of the timefall. If you have an object formed from a liquid, it radiates something called humidity, like putting a cube of ice and sensing the air around it to find it cold. That's due to the heat transfer by radiation and also convection. Convection of small vaporized ice particles, or what we call humidity. If the BTs come from another world filled with water, which appears to be the case since the World of the Dead is clearly connected to the water and beaches, and leave water in their steps, then maybe we can assume that they are humid bodies. And that's what causes the grass to grow rapidly or the water to float. The Higgs-free objects creates Higgs-free aura around it. Did you remember to keep your eyes open? Are they tearing yet? Did you start to feel a little burn? The average time a person can stay with his eyes open before tearing or burning is 30 seconds. But I guess that would be even shorter in the case of humid air. Imagine if these 30 seconds were elongated by the humidity from BTs. You would tear just as our characters tear when the BTs are nearby. If the BTs leave the black liquid, and the timefall is basically the same water, then the chiral allergy is just humidity radiation from the BTs. The E3 2018 trailer gave us a scene where Die Hard Man told Sam,
Sam, what's your status? Chiralium density is still increasing.
My status is fucked.
Chiralium density is still increasing, and he meant the BT's presence and the timefall, giving us a clue that they are actually produce some kind of humidity around them that enables density measurement, and that black liquid, or the otherworldly water, is called chiralium.
Sam Porter Bridges. The man who delivers.
Sam, who is played by none other than Norman Reedus of The Walking Dead, was introduced to us since the first trailer ever, and as the game promotional campaign went on, we learned more and more about him. In TGA 2017 trailer, we learned his name was Sam.
Sam!
Shut up. Don't even breathe.
And that he works for some company named Bridges. And in the E3 2018 trailer, we know that his name was Sam Porter Bridges. He has a condition called a chiral allergy, and he is able to sense BTs but not see them. And of course, he makes deliveries.
I can't help you with that. I make deliveries. That's all.
As of 2019's release date trailer, we got to know that he is close to the president of the UCA, Bridget. That may have been hinted earlier, but this time it's confirmed by the briefing video when Emily and Die Hard Man ask him the same to connect America to make her whole again for Bridget. But what is Sam's story? Who is he in all of this? According to Kojima, he doesn't have any special abilities and isn't military trained. He seemed to be married to someone and waiting for a child. He also seemed to be close to the president even before the Death Stranding. Many speculations went about the washed off lady whose day after day becomes closer to Emily, especially after the weird reception from Sam to her at the briefing trailer. She's already Bridget's daughter, so that ties with his strong relation with Bridget. But where is his son? He must be at least 10 years old by now. In the first trailer, we see Sam holding a kid on the beach, tied with an umbilical cord to him. Then the kid disappears as a BT, and presumably was taken by the other BT that started the trailer. The quote given at the beginning is very interesting, at least to me. How can you see a world in a grain of sand? Something so big in something very small. Or heaven in a white flower, something very beautiful in something that brings harm. Or to hold what cannot be held in your hands. Can you hold infinity? Or even can you live the eternity in 1 hour? Actually, you can if everything is relative. A slight problem could weigh heavier for a person who is stressed, and an ugly pet can seem the cutest to its owner. You might think you have everything if you are satisfied, and an hour spent waiting in fear can feel like forever. But all these feelings happen to a father who have just found his lost son.
Lost and never found.
In the BB spotlight, Sam asks Deadman why can't his BB live longer than a year, and Deadman warns him that he shouldn't get attached with an equipment.
You should remember that BBs are just equipment. Try not to get attached.
And then? You saying there's no way to keep my BB alive?
You must understand, there is still a great deal we don't know about BBs.
Putting all that together, I assume Sam's journey was somehow interrupted by the disappearance of his BB, whom of course he got attached to. Who wouldn't? He went on his own journey to retrieve him from the beach. That's when it was taken from him. That's when the second part of Sam's story comes, when he pursues his lost son, because a father never loses his son twice. The genesis of every great story lies within the conflict that started it. With each conflict, humanity thrives to become better. When you flip a coin, you seek a certain goal, and it's for the coin to lie flat and present a method. But when it stands on its side, it leaves you confused, the kind of confusion that produces anarchy. The three main pillars of our story represent the coin riddle. There is the protagonist, who is the desired outcome, and the antagonist, who might not be as good, so he is not desired. And then the villain, who is nothing but a root for chaos. The protagonist is known. He is Sam Porter Bridges, a man with no military background who is tasked to save humanity. By his own methods that doesn't include brute force or violence. He only makes deliveries, and as we established in the previous chapter, he is already a father who is attached to a baby. But his ways of retrieval seem somehow peaceful. Then we got our antagonist, Cliff, a guy with a military background. He does have a screwed up relation with Bridges, but also wants to retrieve his son. Through offense and brute force, there is a saying, what's taken forcefully isn't taken back, but forcefully. Sam and Cliff represent the two faces of the coin. They both look for a lost child, they both want nothing but him, but they are chiral to each other, alike but never matching. The chaotic one is Higgs, not a single trailer he was seen but a person who enjoys destruction. He was called a terrorist in one trailer and seen kidnapping Emily in another. With a bit of luck and your skill, the protagonist will lie flat. The story is driven by the actions of the characters within. And as we know what Sam might be hypothetically up to, we didn't dive much through Cliff's and Higgs' goals. First was Higgs. Higgs and his homo demons are pretty much explained. They are a group of people who like the new chaotic order the world lives in. They can pretty much go through and rule whenever they want, although Higgs seems to be heavily influenced by the ancient Egyptian mythology. His outfit does have a mask of Tutankhamun, and he once summoned what looked like Ammit, Anubis' pet, and also known as the Devourer of the Dead, and also his preference for gold is as much as them. As for Cliff, if he is stolen for his research, he won't stop then from pursuing his kid. The father's instinct is much stronger than that. As someone who's got both science and love at his side, Cliff started to develop his unfinished stolen projects. The retrieval of BTs. In his introductory trailer, or later, we have seen him summon and command skeletons, as if they were BTs who are possessing their old bodies, or what's left of them. What if Cliff was able to make the BTs connect to him and then transfer them to human bodies? Is that the promise he made to his PP when he said, I will show you the real thing soon, I promise? Maybe Cliff is actually trying to bring peace and order to the world. Maybe he is trying to get rid of the BTs and get back his son by enabling them to take human form. Kojima already created characters before who looked evil and had mischievous methods, but wanted noble goals. It won't be surprising if he did it again. Especially that Ocelot was pretty good.
Oh, pretty good.
You're pretty good. Pretty good.
There are still a few things that lack multi-dimensional logical proofs, or that's how I like to call them, and they lack them unlike most of the speculations in this video. I might put them up in a new video or never put them until they are proved better. There are not much left until the game anyway, so let's enjoy Kojima's wonderful game and his wonderful mind game and puzzle. Lastly, I have used Occam's razor's principle while theorizing all that. I put in my mind that the easiest explanation that comes into my mind is usually right. I had a broken shoulder that rendered me unable to continue this earlier. But the good thing about the delay is that the Gamescom shows confirmed a lot of things and made other things clearer. This is formed on June 8, 2019, about 10 days after the release date trailer. And as I said at the beginning, facts don't exist, only interpretations. This is mine. And don't let anyone sell you any theory to you as a fact using fallacies. One last thing, and it's that this video wouldn't have gotten out to light if it weren't for my friends. When my initial hypothesis got confirmed, they encouraged me to continue this theory. They also helped me make sure it was consistent with itself and doesn't go wild at any point. As Kojima instructed in his trailers, they give me their hands in life. If you like this video, share it. I don't care about likes or subscribers. I made this video to share my thoughts with you. What would make me happier is if people learned about it. The game comes out after 2 months. It could be right, it could be wrong. It could be a total waste of time, and it could be the perfect explanation for the plot. I only care if people learned about it. And I want to apologize if my accent was of any inconvenience to anyone, as I am not a native English speaker. I am Egyptian and my native language is Arabic. Goodbye and Assalamu alaikum.